Chris, unfortunately, is very poorly today, so Alex has kindly stepped in. And we're going to be talking about something you actually know quite a lot about, DC's TV universe.
Yes, so I've long been a fan of Arrow and, of course, Flash. But more recently, Legends of Tomorrow was just aired in the US.
Yeah, so you might have seen the first 2 episodes, you might not. Either way, it doesn't matter. We're not going to go into spoilers. We're going to talk about more about what the show is generally aiming at. And if you clicked on this video, we've used Doctor Who as kind of a comparison because not just because Arthur Darvill's in it, and he was obviously Rory in Doctor Who, just kind of the setup is a great setup, and it's one of the setups that makes Doctor Who great and appealing for writers and easy to dip in and out of. Lots of writers have called the TARDIS the greatest kind of storytelling device of all time because you can literally go anywhere, meet anyone, do anything. And it feels like this show kind of has a similar kind of setup.
Yeah, it's very different from kind of what we've seen in Flash and Arrow already because it's essentially a science fiction show as much as it is a superhero show, I guess. And you've got Rip Hunter, who is Rory from Doctor Who, is this guy that can travel through time, a time master, I think he's called. And
it's because like some terrible event happened in the future. So the basic premise, it's not a spoiler, the basic premise is in the future, London 2166 or something, everything has gone to hell, and he's asking permission if he can go back in time, recruit these kind of wayward, well, some are heroes, some are reluctant heroes, some are villains.
We'll talk about that more in a second.
And go through time, fixing problems, and basically stopping Vandal Savage.
Pulling together the Legends of Tomorrow. And so Vandal Savage is this supervillain, immortal supervillain, who throughout time has been influencing events that have happened on Earth. So he was the guy that whispered into Hitler's ear and saying, you know, you should start World War II. I'm sure it didn't pan out quite like that, but that's the basic kind of premise. And I think I like that idea. I love the fact that...
As a setup, it's brilliant. Like chasing a villain through history.
And from the beginning of time, he's the person that's actually made all these bad things happen in one way or another.
The ultimate villain, like the villain behind every villain.
And that I thought was brilliant. And we don't really get to see much of him in this, or the first kind of episode of the show. He's hinted at, so it'd be interesting to see what kind of a character that he kind of builds up to, because this show is going to kind of basically rise or fall on his performance. I think we haven't seen enough of that. But I do think that if I was presented with only that, I'd be like, I'm in. I'm well up for this show.
And it's like it's interesting. Like definitely talk about DC this week, but it's Marvel in the comics recently. A couple of years ago, they relaunched Silver Surfer. And it's written by a guy called Dan Slott, who writes Spider-Man. And he's a huge Doctor Who fan, and he's very unashamed about it. Like, the new Silver Surfer is Doctor Who. Silver Surfer can travel through time and space, and he has a female companion. And it's Marvel Doctor Who, and this is a great setup. But what's slightly different is they've got much more characters. It's not just like the Doctor and his companion. There's a lot of them on that ship together. There's a lot of characters to juggle, and I think the show will succeed on their chemistry, and also like there's a lot of characters to service.
It's a lot
with
of
very
weird
different
characters.
So we'll get into the characters now. Like, I guess there's lots of it's a very disharmonious group of people.
So as someone who's kind of spent a lot of time in both Arrow and Flash, I feel a bit like they're the kind of cast-offs. So you've got Sarah Lance, who comes back as White Canary in this. You've got Atom, so Ray Palmer, who I think is brilliant in Arrow.
You're a big fan of him.
And then you've got Heatwave and Captain Cold. And I was never a particularly big fan of those guys.
I'm not a big fan of their performances. Are so big. Like they're really pantomime. Which I actually think that's totally fine if they're showing up in an episode of Flash as the villain. But like all the time, I think it could be a bit more. I hope it's an opportunity for them to change and do something with those characters, and then for them to, like, a bit cheesy, to grow. But because they can't be at that level throughout an entire series.
And I think that is, you are pulling together so many cheesy characters in this show that it's not offset against anything else like it would be in Flash or Arrow. It's all cheese. It's a fondue of superheroes, if you will. But then even like Heatwave, and Heatwave's changed slightly for Legends of Tomorrow. It just feels like the biggest mishmash, that there's no consistency, and they kind of insinuate, like Rip Hunter says, like he's just gone through and pulled out people I won't say the reason why, because that's, if you're going to watch it, it'll explain that. But that just felt like a bit of a cheap excuse to me as to why you were going for these people.
Well, it's more like, you know, some people have discussed this online that, you know, they would obviously, if they could do whatever they want, it'd be great to have like a Justice League on TV.
Absolutely.
They can't do that for obvious reasons, even though they're redoing some of the characters. They're not doing that. So it's kind of like, let's make another team. You know, in comics they do this. They take second tier characters, third tier characters, put them together to kind of, you know, in comics to increase the value of that comic. You get in more than one B-list character. And I think it more depends on like their chemistry and the situations they can put them in. I do worry about it being so many characters and how they can, in a 45-minute episode, give everyone something meaningful to do.
The only thing I can imagine it will be is that we'll probably have episodes where it's probably just focusing on a couple of people. This first episode, everyone was obviously introduced because, you know, it's a pilot.
It's a really clunky opening 15 minutes where he has to go and recruit them all.
And explain
it's almost like cookie cutter.
Who is who and how they fit together. And even at the end, they're kind of explaining why they're the team and why they want to do what they're doing, and it just doesn't sit right. I don't get that vibe, and maybe that will come in time, and that actually, you know, that this guy Vandal Savage is the real bad guy that they're making him out to be, but that's not coming across at the minute.
I mean, you see him doing more bad things, I think.
And I think like the other thing that we discussed was, you know, you've got the whole of time and space open to you to travel to, and they travel to kind of the mid 1970s. Like,
so what,
it looks pretty much the same as it does now.
It's like I used to be a big fan of the Jennifer Garner TV show Alias, and where she's a spy. And the premise of that is she, like, every week she would go somewhere different in the world. But no matter where she went, whether it was Morocco or Paris or Stockholm, all looked like downtown LA. There's a bit where she went to Morocco, and they were quite obviously in a mall in LA, and all they did was put a rug, like a kind of Middle Eastern looking rug, over a balcony, and like shot it really tightly.
Oh my gosh!
So
and there was a brief glimpse of one of the scenes in ancient Egypt, and I was like, that's what I want to see. I want to see that kind of stuff, and I really want to see them travel.
Hopefully they've got the budget to do that, because obviously a lot of special effects. You got the ship and all that stuff. Hopefully they've got enough, because even like Doctor Who, you know, you've got tight budgets, and you know sometimes these productions have to cut corners, but hopefully they don't have to like all do it in places that are easily creatable. I hope they do, like, you know, go back to ancient Egypt, really push it out there a bit more.
And I think so, you know, ultimately, love the concept. I think it's a slow start, but I think that's because it's got so many things to address. It's trying to bring in, you know, if you're new to the show, it's trying to introduce a lot of new characters. If you're familiar with like the DC universe, then it's trying to kind of make it not too clunky. So it's, you know, ambitious job for episodes 1 and 2, but I'm remaining hopeful that they get something sorted for the rest of the season.
So we're going to move on to some feedback. Let us know what you think of Legends Tomorrow Superhero Show at IGN.com. A couple of weeks ago, you weren't on the show, but we asked people to send in suggestions for superheroes if you could cast anyone from all of cinematic history. I'm just going to read through a couple of here. These are good. Sam MacArthur McLean for Bruce Banner, Oliver Reed.
That's a great shout. That's a great shout.
Oliver Reed.
But only where like he's absolutely battered.
We had this one before, but it's still really good. Worth saying. Clark Gable, Tony Stark.
Nice.
Orson Welles as Thanos. Matthew McConaughey as Gambit, more recent. Steve McQueen as Ghost Rider.
Nice.
Kevin Costner as Captain America. Christopher Lee as Doctor Strange. This is good. I quite like a lot of these.
We've got a whole bunch of casting directors.
Daniel Day-Lewis as Batman. Imagine that.
That would be good.
He would actually do it, I think. So those are your suggestions. Please send us more, superheroShow@IGN.com. But until next week, for everything on all things superheroes, stay right here on IGN.